Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. Happy Friday. We're coming up on the final days of March. My God, the first quarter, 2023. It's already falling by. But yeah, that's been, I'm not afraid to admit it, a little bit of a dry tech spell as of lately, but I think this is kind of the new normal, which kind of forces us to be a little bit more creative with what we cover. But this question, I think, okay, good. I'm glad Margel's here in the chat. Basically, this question is being kickstarted by one of our Tailosive Tech Pro members. Thank you to everybody supporting the channel. Also, bizarrely, people signing up for Tailosive Tech. Someone signed up. Who was it? I'm sorry, there was just so crazy I had to bring it up. Oliver the Buy signed up for Tailosive Tech Max yesterday. There was no stream or anything. He just decided to sign up. That's insane. But you've been added as a moderator, by the way, in case you're watching. Very bizarre. But yeah, Marngel, essentially on the community post just available to pro members, asked what the future of MacBook designs would be and if I thought that legacy ports were going away again, or are they here to stay? Which is a pretty interesting question because in my experience, at least following Apple over the years, it's pretty rare for them to take away something but then bring it back. You know, I've seen on iPhones and iPods and all kinds of things, Apple will remove something, but the concept of removing it and then bringing it back almost never happens. That's like a pretty rare occurrence. So it feels kind of like uncharted territory to me once we start hypothesizing on, okay, does that mean if it's back, it's gonna stay back? And like, is there no intention on removing these ports ever again? So I thought this would be a fun topic because it kind of gives the audience a chance to make your case. Of course, we have a live stream poll running and we've got most people voting yes. But I think what might be worth asking, well, I guess not most people. The poll's actually pretty split. As of right now, 50 people have voted. 41% say yes, which is the most common one. And for the most part, I'll just say on the record, I agree with that. I feel like Apple could easily get themselves into a really bizarre, confusing time where if they remove it again and people deem it too early, then everyone's going to want to buy the older MacBooks because the new MacBooks probably are going to have a hard time finding faster performance or better efficiency and all that. So I agree. I think that they are here to stay myself, partly because I think Apple is usually the type of company to accelerate the adoption of a new standard, and USB-C I think they pushed really, really hard for once they introduced both the 2015 MacBook and then the 2016 MacBook Pros. They went all in on Type-C, and that blossomed this whole community of USB-C accessories and dongles that lots of people bought and probably still use and still have. I'm very grateful that USB-C is hopefully accelerating the progression away from USB-A. I hate USB-A, and I want that to die. So I'm at least glad that we're getting closer to killing that off entirely. But when it comes to things like HDMI or the SD card slot, now that they're bringing those back on their very, very popular MacBook Pro models, there's less and less justification now for third-party companies and for consumers, ultimately, to stop using them. Because that's usually what Apple's been really good at, is like, here's the future, here's what we want you all to switch to, whether it's wireless or, you know, AirPods or Lightning or... it was USB-A for a while, it was FireWire for a while, then it was Thunderbolt. There's all kinds of new standards that have existed during Apple's history where they've been like, okay, here's the new standard, move on from it, adopt to the new thing. And now that they are directly enabling and even encouraging the use of these legacy ports that already had a lot of legacy to them between the HDMI cables out there, the SD card slots, they're straight up encouraging the use of them to prolong upon all of the legacy they have. Now there's people buying new MacBook Pros and utilizing those new ports on them, and they're advertising the faster speeds. The new MacBook Pros with the M2 Pro and the M2 Max chips, they have HDMI 2.1. So again, it's like Apple doubling down on this feature, and now the HDMI port is actually capable of handling certain things that the Thunderbolt port can't. So for the foreseeable future, from what I can tell, is that the ports are here to stay for quite a while. But then the more interesting part of the poll, which is a discussion I think we should be having for this stream, that's why I'm so grateful that we do these streams, because I like picking your guys' brains on it too. In real time, it's not just me speculating in a video. But what does legacy ports here to stay really mean? Could that imply that they stay for 10 years and then they go away? Or could that imply that they stay? When we say they're here to stay, could that mean 50 years? 100 years? Do you think in the year 2123 we're still going to be using HDMI ports? I would say most of you would probably say no. Maybe some of you out there would hold out hope for it. But hey, we were using headphone jacks back in 1920s, I think. Let's see. Thunderbolt 4 does not have capacity for 6K or 8K at 120 hertz. That's correct. But HDMI 2.1 does. Raphael, thank you for your 7 months of support. I always prefer the clean look of MacBook USB-C only. I like the look, but I have to acknowledge, I get what you're coming from, but I have to acknowledge the vast majority of time I use my MacBook Pro, I'm not looking at it from the side profile like this. I don't look at it from the side angles. I'm using it straight on, and I can't see any of the ports when I'm using it right now. Hey, there's Oliver, the crazy guy who signed up for Tailosive Tech Max for no reason. He said, as someone who has used old MagSafe MacBooks and the 2019 MacBooks, I prefer the MagSafe. All the better to you. I don't see an issue with having both. That's my best case scenario. Have Type-C, have MagSafe. Most people don't replace their PC monitors for a decade. I still use my full HD 27-inch Dell from 10 years ago. That's probably true, and I also think that as technology gets better and better with higher resolutions and higher frame rates, there is progressively less reason to upgrade that tech because there's a law of diminishing returns. Like, people won't be able to tell the same difference that we can tell now between 1080p and 4K. It's not an equivalent jump from 4K to 8K. Even though pixel-wise it's an equivalent jump, the human eye can't tell the difference as easily, which is why if there's people holding on to PC monitors for 10 years now, the PC monitors people are buying today, they might hold on to them for 20 years. I don't care for MagSafe as much as just Type-C, but again, the new MacBooks have both, so you don't really have to choose. You can use whichever one fits you better. Zach D. Hawson says, might be a dumb question, but what is a legacy port? Sorry, maybe I should have clarified that. To me, legacy ports are defined, at least in this context, someone else might have a different definition. Yes, I'm streaming off of the MacBook webcam, $1 snake. I like it. I think it looks good. Also, this is my MacBook Pro microphone, which I think is amazing. Anyway, my definition of legacy port is a port that Apple removed on a particular product and then brought back. At least in this case with the MacBook Pros back in 2016, they removed the SD card slot. They removed the HDMI port. They did remove MagSafe, but they technically did not bring back they did not bring back the same version of MagSafe that they had before. So that one's kind of like a half legacy port because it's technically a new connector and it doesn't work with the old MagSafe connectors. So that's not really the one I'm referring to. Technically, the headphone jack was never removed, so I don't consider that a legacy port quite yet. But I guess you could kind of bunch that in with the rest because some people are like, hey, well, you remove the headphone jacks on the iPads, but not the MacBooks. And, you could say, well, the MacBooks are used for more audio stuff. And it's like, well, they're shipping M2 chips with the iPads now. So, and they're pitching it as an audio creation tool a lot of the time. Samuel says, I love my legacy ports, especially SD card slot. I think they're very handy, and I don't personally think they hurt anything by being there, even though I don't personally use my SD card slot a lot. My opinion on the revival of the legacy ports is we have to take a step back further. Why did they remove them in the first place? Apple removed things lots of times. They removed the CD drives, the optical drives off of MacBooks years ago. They still never brought those back. They removed USB-A, thank God. They removed the Ethernet connector, which some people still want back. I personally think they could add it back through the power brick. They did it with the iMac. Isn't that like a great solution? Except you have to buy the stupid, ugly iMac with the chin. The iMac brought back the Ethernet connection through the power adapter. I don't know why the MacBooks can't do the same thing. They have this updated MagSafe 3. It supports the higher wattage charging, but it could also, in my opinion, I see no reason for it to not do data. If you're connecting your MacBook to Ethernet, it's more than likely going to be at a stationary... You're not using Ethernet on the go that often. You're not using Ethernet in the car or out in the field too much. So if you needed Ethernet, just baking that into the power adapter so that the power adapter stays in one place at your desk at home. You plug in your networking cables to that, and then when you dock your MacBook with the MagSafe cable, boom, you now have a wired internet connection. I feel like Apple came up with the solution. They just didn't implement it on the right product. But the reason they removed them in the first place, just like how Apple removes lots of things in the past, is because they believe there is a better solution. It doesn't matter if you believe it's a better solution or not. It's just that Apple believes there is one. And in my opinion, I liked that idea because I liked Type-C as a design. I liked how fast it was. I liked how fast you could charge things. I liked how fast you could move data through it. It felt like the last port we ever needed. But I think the main reason, I have to admit, that it didn't transition the way Apple had hoped, and we were still in 2020 and even 2021 using MacBook Pros with all these dongles because the rest of the industry didn't move on to Type-C. I don't think Apple tried hard enough because, for one, I've been advocating Apple should get into the camera business for years. My solution from the get-go was that AirDrop on cameras would remove the need for SD card slots. At least if it could be refined and support faster and faster speeds over time, whether that's through ultra wideband or what have you. I felt like, at least for photographers who aren't moving as much data as maybe a videographer was, that you could replace the need for SD card slots if you could just wirelessly transmit all of the pictures you took on your camera to the Mac. You don't need a cable, you don't need an adapter, you don't need an SD card. I don't really love the idea of having little cards, and that's why I record my videos straight to SSD, because this allows me to continue using Type-C, so I can plug it into either side of the MacBook. This has 2 terabytes of storage, and it's small, and it fits onto the side of my camera back there. So little tiny SD cards, they break, and they're flimsy, and they get lost and stuff. And they're like sticking out the side of the MacBook and you're worried about breaking them off and that kind of thing. I'm not a huge fan of SD cards, but I also at the same time admit most photographers and videographers are using them. My microphone, when I used to record audio files straight off my mic, that uses an SD card slot, so I did use my MacBook's SD card slot quite a bit for that. My iMac Pro also had an SD card slot, even though it came out in 2017. I guess they thought it was worth keeping on the desktops. I love the iMac Pro, to be honest. For the time, it was such a great product, such a great design. So because Apple didn't try hard enough, and the TV industry in particular was just so steadfast on keeping HDMI, and they had no intention of adopting USB-C, they kind of single-handedly quit that transition from fully being completed. I don't think it's necessarily because Type-C just fundamentally can't work on TVs. I think it could, but the TV manufacturers are just... Maybe it's because they're already very low margin. They're not willing to change up or change styles much. All they want to do is make thinner TVs, but we couldn't get TV manufacturers on board with the idea of transitioning things to all be Type-C. And because they couldn't transition that industry... That made keeping USB-C as the only input option progressively more frustrating as the years went by. Apple thought maybe we could get everyone to transition over and it wouldn't be a big deal in 2 to 3 years, maybe 4. But once it was 2020 and we're still having to use all these dongles and adapters for everything, it was probably like, okay, we tried, it's not going well. Now it's just a detriment to our product, and this is by far the most common thing so many MacBook buyers are requesting is, I want these ports back. And I think, for the most part, they chose a pretty decent port layout. I'm grateful that they didn't bring back USB-A, even though there's probably a lot of people that still want USB-A to come back. Maybe after HDMI 2.1, every monitor or TV adapt Thunderbolt 5 or something that has USB Type-C connector, then HDMI can go away from MacBook Pro. I would like that to happen, but I personally just don't see anyone pushing for it that hard. We're coming up with newer and newer iterations of HDMI 2.1. There's variants of 2.1 that go higher and higher at data throughput. It is physically larger than USB-C, so as pins get better at transmitting data, I still think that HDMI is probably going to have some inherent advantages over Type-C for video. I think the vast majority of video can be done via Type-C. It's just kind of exclusive, nitty-gritty, techie things that you need HDMI for. But if the TV manufacturers won't budge, which they didn't budge when Apple was pushing so hard for Type-C, and also they kept HDMI around on the Mac Minis from the beginning. No TV maker would include no HDMI ports when everything people owns, like cable boxes, game consoles, etc., has HDMI. It would never sell. So that's a good point, Andy. Maybe the reason TV manufacturers didn't want to budge is because TVs are used to plug in so many various things made by so many different companies. Between PlayStations, Xboxes, Xfinity, cable TV boxes, all of these things are built with the standard of HDMI. They've all basically just defaulted to, well, we got to keep offering HDMI because people use their TVs as, the center console for the living room entertainment. You got to plug all these various things into it. So if they started switching over to Type-C, it would just be a nightmare of adapters and dongles for anyone who bought it. And it would probably hurt the sales of the TV because TVs are not something that people tend to buy too frequently anyway. So if they are going to buy only one or two, over the course of a decade or 2 decades, then they're going to make sure that it is compatible or, backwards supported all of their existing stuff. But I appreciate the support, Ben. I don't know why you're still paying for Tailosive Tech Max, but thank you. SD cards will be needed for a while. Don't see cameras having built-in hard drives for a variety of reasons. I just used an SD adapter for my work, actually, on my M1 Air. Well, there you go. See, you still bought a computer that doesn't have it, but you get by with it. No, I wouldn't put hard drives in the cameras, but it would just be NANDs, just like your phones have. You can put a NAND in a phone. I don't see why you couldn't put a NAND in a camera. It's not dangerous or fragile or anything. Certain cameras already have a certain amount of local storage, I think. Actually, with NANDs, you could probably even write faster than what you could do with externally mounted SSDs, which is what they use a lot of the time now. That's true. HDMI 2.1 has more bandwidth than the current USB-C, but I don't think that means that the vast majority of people will utilize that. I think there will be a handful of people that utilize it, but those people are probably more likely to buy desktops than laptops, frankly. And there's an increasingly smaller generation of people buying desktops these days because laptops are getting so powerful. Let me see if I missed anything out. Doesn't the SD card slot also just go in one way? Shouldn't that die? Yeah, I kind of wish that they put a better... There's different versions of SD card slot they could make, like the one on my camera goes in all the way. I would prefer that on the MacBook so that it's more cleanly plugged into the side, and then you can push it to eject it. I don't love this implementation on my MacBook Pro, but I don't use it anymore because, again, I write everything to a little 2 terabyte SSD, and that seems to work fine. HDMI is a settled standard. Nothing actually wrong with it, but being too bulky for smaller devices. As far as older legacy ports go, I don't hate HDMI because at least it's not symmetrical like USB-A is. I think the reason I hate USB-A so much and the reason why I'm not okay with that coming back is it was a horribly designed port from the beginning. It was the dumbest idea in the history of technology to build a common port that is symmetrical but not reversible. That's why everybody still struggles with let me try to plug it. Oh, wait, it's not plugged in right. Let me try this way. Oh, no, that didn't work. I had it right the first time. That's still a problem I see everybody facing all the time with USB-A cables, and that needed to die. It was not an inherently fast connector. You could get much, much faster speeds and faster power delivery through USB-C than you could with USB-A. So I'm very grateful we're moving away from that, and I'm grateful that Apple is not really encouraging the recommended use from it. I guess on their Mac Studio and the Mac Mini, they have a couple of USB-A ports just for your older stuff, but I would love for that to completely die. I wouldn't mind if newer generation Mac Minis or Mac Studios got rid of USB-A entirely. But HDMI, at least, it does support insane amount of video output capability, more so than what Thunderbolt can handle right now. But I think Thunderbolt could get better and probably surpass it. But HDMI can also get better simultaneously. But HDMI, at least you can look at the cable and know exactly which way to plug it in because it's not symmetrical. I appreciate that aspect of the design, and it's somewhat thin. It's not a super bulky connector like VGA, older connectors that were around at the same time. The fact that the logo was supposed to be up, which was never followed. Yeah, no. You can't expect people to know that. Let's see. Mini DisplayPort could replace HDMI for a smaller connector, but not USB-C. I don't think the likelihood, now that Apple's okay with HDMI, I don't think the likelihood of it sticking around is very, or coming back as a standard. Because the more technology we mass produce and the more people buy this stuff at larger and larger scales, the more availability of HDMI cables there are, which essentially just means that there's going to be a ton of HDMI cables now because Apple's on multiple generations of MacBook allowing it. Although only on the higher end ones, I should mention. They haven't brought back SD card slot or HDMI on the lower end MacBooks. But the people using those lower end MacBooks are probably less likely to utilize those. What do I think of display ports? They're fine. I just think HDMI kind of simplifies it by having a backwards compatible connector. There's so many different versions of HDMI that you can plug into. There's only so many versions of DisplayPort, and I don't think they're as widespread or as common, especially on TVs or consoles and that kind of thing. USB-A was only made that way because it was insanely cheap. It has nothing but a small PCB and a metal rectangle. It was cheap. I guess that was its one strength, and that's why so many people still put USB-A cables on things and include USB-A in so many things, is because it is really cheap, but it is also very frustrating. I know USB-C is probably an additional expense for companies to include over USB-A, but I personally would argue that that additional expense is totally worth it. Look at the yellow iPhone 14 in AR and look at the Apple logo. You can see a room. If there was anything meaningful for me to look at, I'm sure there would have been more news articles written about it by now. It just seems like a trick to get me to look at the yellow iPhone. No matter what, micro B will always be worse than even something so little as a fart in the general direction of the plugged-in connector and the cable self-destructs. I disagree because micro B was not symmetrical, so at least you knew exactly which way to plug it in. The amount of collective man-hours we have wasted on USB-A sickens me. Micro B, yeah, it's a little bit annoying. It's not a great connector, but at least you can look at it and know which way to plug it in. There are discounts on a 14 Pro around $100. Should I buy or wait for the regular 15? I don't think $100 is a great discount, to be honest, on a phone that expensive. If I were you, I'd wait, just because there's a growing likelihood that USB-C will be on the next iPhone. And if that's true, buying an iPhone in late March of 2023 that still has Lightning is kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. Micro B could still be forced in upside down and it destroyed the port. Well, if we're talking force, the problem is USB-A looked like it fit either way and it didn't. I would have been more okay with USB-A if it worked either way. That would have been more interesting. But, okay, so we answered Marngel's question here. I wanted to check out other people's Tailosive Tech Pro questions. Purosky says, thoughts on a dock that you can pull up while in an app similar to the iPad with a search button above it for iPhones. So that one kind of was a head scratcher to me. I was a little bit confused when he asked that. So I was trying to fool around with it on my phone, and I feel like that slight swipe up you do on the iPad to activate the dock is basically how you activate multitasking. But I guess maybe if the dock came up while you were in the multitasking menu, maybe, but then you're already in the multitasking menu, so do you need more apps to be accessible at the bottom, and to have a search key at the bottom? I mean, there's probably a clever way to implement that. Maybe I just need to see concept art of what it looks like. But personally, I think these phones are so small anyway You can't fit that much useful additional information on top of what they've already got. So I'm not inherently against it, but I think it would quickly make the UI very cluttered, I guess, is my short answer. Chris Norton says, what are we talking about? We started the stream talking about... Thank you for the super chat, Chris. That's very kind of you. We started the stream talking about whether or not HDMI and the SD card slot will stick around on the MacBook Pros. It seems like most people think they will. The poll is leading towards 28% are voting that for the next 5 years they'll stay and then they'll go away. I'm curious to the people voting for that, what you think will replace them. Will Apple go back to USB-C on everything, or like why would they be okay with it in the next 5 years but not now? Like, what do you think is going to change if Apple's okay with the mass production and mass adoption of the SD card slot and HDMI port? What makes you think the market's going to be any more ready to switch to just USB-C by then? Because right now I feel like manufacturers don't have a motivation for it to come back, because even the popular MacBooks brought it back. Let's see. Okay, Hasayel says, the new Oppo flagship has a huge circular camera bump. Would you be okay with Apple sacrificing MagSafe in order to improve the camera even more in the future, or have the camera with limitations but keep MagSafe? So personally, here's how I've worked it out. I don't have a teardown necessarily right in front of me, but basically like a 14 Pro Max. I don't have one here, but because the phones are so big, you can actually move the MagSafe ring down lower to not necessarily be right in the center of the phone. Yes, that probably would make some accessories not work as great, but because the 14 Pro Max is so big, and the MagSafe wallet and the MagSafe battery pack are optimized to work with even the 13 mini, you could move it down quite a bit and still have most of the Apple certified accessories still work with it. There's some car accessories where if you try to use MagSafe in landscape mode, where it would probably become a little lopsided and off-center and maybe it wouldn't work as well. But I think you can move the MagSafe ring down to make more room for the camera bump, and that's likely the direction they'll head in over time. MagSafe might start to not quite be in the center of the phone. I personally think that the camera bumps are getting out of control, and the cameras in smartphones are plenty good already. I don't think they need to get bigger, but that's not Apple's mindset towards it. Apple's just like, every year there's less and less things for us to talk about, so we need to focus more on making the camera better and better and better, and usually the only way to do that is to capture more light and fit bigger sensors in there. So likely it's not going to change. I'm pretty content with my iPhone 10. I don't have too many complaints with this camera, and it's very small bump on the back, but I think it's more likely that they'll compromise on MagSafe and make the camera bump bigger, personally, than they are going to not let the camera bump get bigger, but keep MagSafe in the same place. But yeah, I watched MKBHD's video on the new Oppo flagship. Seems fine. It's just exactly what everyone expects, more refinement upon refinement. It's just the best specs in the world, and the end result is, you use your phone exactly the way you use your last phone. Not a huge deal. At least with USB-A, you don't waste hundreds of dollars for replacing constantly destroyed cables. Again, the solution is Type-C. That's all I feel about it. I don't see the point in arguing between a micro B or USB A. They all suck. Let's just acknowledge Type-C should be the default, and there's a few exceptions, whether it be HDMI or MagSafe or SD card slot, but for the most part, Type-C can pretty much do everything. Did you see the report back in February about Apple Watch getting closer to glucose monitoring? From what I've seen, Series 10 would be the one to implement it. Yeah, I do think I remember reading something about it, but I try not to get my hopes up because I've been literally talking about those reports for years. A good friend of mine that did architectural design that actually worked on the Steve Jobs Theater, he's been curious because he's diabetic. And ever since the Apple Watch came out back in 2015, he was asking me if I thought they could incorporate glucose monitoring in the Apple Watch. Because he said, if they did, I'd be interested in buying one. But he was like, unless they do that, I'm not interested. So I remember having this talk, and there were patents and there were rumors that Apple was working on glucose monitoring way back in 2015, 2016, and here we are in 2023, and we're like, well, maybe next year they'll figure it out. So I'm like, I hope so, because I do think already the Apple Watch is incredibly popular and it's incredibly widespread, and I think it's become the number one watch in the world, period. It's not even number one smartwatch, it's just the most common watch in the world. It's already incredibly popular, but if it had very reliable and FDA-approved glucose monitoring, that would put it on a whole new level of popular, I think, especially in the diabetic community. So clearly Apple wants that. We want that. It's just a matter of, can the engineers figure it out? And they've been trying to figure it out for years. So there's rumors. There's been rumors for years. So that's why I try not to get my hopes up. But Chris Norton super chatted. He says, I hope legacy ports should stay as I have loads of USB-A cables. Ugh. But that's not a good reason to keep a cable. With that same logic, Chris, we'd still all be using 30-pin connectors. We had tons of 30-pin connectors, and then Apple switched to Lightning, and now you're all defending Lightning and saying, well, I have lots of Lightning cables around. To me, that's not a good reason to keep something, especially when there's a much better connector that can handle faster speeds, faster data, and it's reversible, unlike USB-A, which is not reversible. There's certain legacy ports that should go away, and that's one of them, in my opinion. So just so that your old cables keep working, I think is kind of a short-term answer, because those cables are probably going to stop working after a certain amount of time anyway. Apple should have switched to USB-C with the iPhone 12. Josh says they should have switched with the iPhone 10. I think iPhone 10 would have been a good time, just because there was so many changes year over year. People were going to have to use their phone more differently. There's no more home button. There's no more Touch ID. You can't see the battery percentage anymore. Obviously, they changed their minds on that, but I feel like there was so many updates all at once with the iPhone 10 that switching to Type-C wouldn't have been like that big a deal to most people buying it, because they were already having to relearn how the phone worked. So including a new connector on top of that wouldn't have been a big stretch to me. But better late than ever, I guess. I would rather them adopt it now than go straight to portless. I don't think that would have paid off. Okay, Hasael had another question. He says, I think the most underrated tech YouTuber is Flossie Carter. He'll do 1.5 hour reviews of phones trying to get every detail possible. Thoughts on his channel? I haven't watched a ton, I apologize, but of the ones I've seen, yes, he seems like a really cool guy that's very just brutally honest, which I appreciate in a content creator, someone that's not just trying to game the algorithm, but someone who, I like people who get into the little details. I think he reviews more Android phones, so that's why I'm less likely to watch him. But absolutely, mad respect, and yes, I would agree. Very underrated YouTuber. So special shout out to Flossie Carter from Hasael and myself. Much better tech YouTuber than I am. So Marngel is kind of what we kickstarted the stream on. We already talked about that quite a bit. eUpload says, how many subscribers have you actually lost or gained after telling people to unsubscribe everywhere? So I apologize for the lack of context on that one. It didn't really, the reaction wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. Basically, my mindset with those tweets and those community posts was that I think too many people hold too much value in the subscriber count. Like, there's so many people that are like, oh, his channel has this many subs, or his channel has this many subs. And they just look at that as a definition or your rating of success. Like, that's how successful your channel is how many subs you have. And I just do not believe that at all, because there are so many channels with way less subs than me that get way more views than me. And vice versa. I also get way more views than other channels with way more subs than me. And now that YouTube is more based around just recommendations, so many people just watch a ton of videos based on what's in their home feed, and now Shorts is becoming more popular. The notification bell doesn't work half the time for people anyway. The subscriber count is mostly pointless. It almost means nothing. Like, the vast majority, I don't know about the majority, but like nearly half or close to half of my views come from people who aren't subscribed. And a lot of people just don't use the subscriptions feed anymore. They don't use the subscribe feature to follow people. They just watch what shows up in their algorithm. And I'm not saying that's bad. I do the exact same thing. Maybe I'm a bit more legacy in that way. I like my sub feed to be in chronological order, and I subscribe to a certain number of channels. And there's certain channels that I will just watch without question as soon as they upload. Most of them are EV, though, not tech stuff. And I just think that you can have a very inactive channel with a lot of subs that's still posting regularly, but just that all those subs aren't watching anymore. So I felt like, how often does this channel get more than 100,000 views on a video? Very rarely. Maybe like once a year, maybe twice a year. It's very rare, and yet people look at that sub count as, oh, that's how big or that's how successful his channel is. I didn't want people looking at me that way. I'm okay being a smaller creator. I wanted to get rid of and kind of weed out those inactive subscribers, so I just straight up said, please unsubscribe, if it as kind of a test to be like, well, if someone who doesn't like my channel but hasn't unsubscribed saw that post and was like, hey, that's right, I forgot, I need to unsubscribe from that guy, that would kind of kickstart the decision, I suppose. But let's see, subscriber, I can pull up the data here. I'm just trying not to reveal too much information. I think I can show this much. Yes. Okay, so I was hoping that I was hoping to drop a few thousand off just to get rid of the inactive, but it didn't really go the way I'd hoped. So here's my subscriber amounts basically over the past month. You know, I was averaging, sometimes you can get a big video, get up to 100 a day, a few dozen a day. This is when I made the post, I lost 49. The next day, 44. Next day, 6. So honestly, it didn't really accomplish what I had hoped for. Basically, all it did was it made all of the people who do like watching my channel very paranoid that I was hacked or that something was wrong. And they were like, oh, Drew, what's wrong? Or it's like, is your mental health okay or something? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I was just trying to keep the channel a bit more engaged with more of like a passionate subscriber base instead of a bunch of bots. But now that literally just posting about it and asking people to unsubscribe only resulted in maybe 120 people out of 251,000 unsubscribing was not that big an impact. So I don't think that'll work. I guess I have to accept that there will just probably continuously be a lot of inactive subscribers. And I was looking for a way to turn off that option. Like, YouTube used to let you deactivate the public subscriber count because I didn't want people looking at that number as a form of worth or a form of this is how successful the channel is. I didn't like that association that so much of the YouTube community had. So I was like, I want to turn this setting off. How do I hide that number so that people can't see it? And they got rid of that option. They got rid of the dislike counter so that no one knows how many dislikes a channel or video has, but they don't let you get rid of the sub count, which I feel like you could make the exact same argument of like that affects someone's mental health potentially. Like, why can't someone take that away? So I was very confused by them removing it, but let me know if they do, because I would like to turn it off. I think it's a pointless stat. People just get obsessed with sub counts and they really don't mean anything anymore. And I don't want to be associated or I don't want my channel to be dictated by that number. Like, that's how big the tech channel is. It's not really a good indication. Let's see. We had... I think this only works on people that are upset with you. Well, that was my hope. If people were upset with me, they would unsubscribe, which is what I was intentionally trying to do, but I guess not that many people were upset with me in the first place. They just don't watch or whatever. Flossie's got risque jokes. That's good. The best way to weed out inactive subs is to start a new channel, post your tech content there, and have people subscribe to that. I don't like that because I like the backlog we've grown. I like how people can go back and watch. I love it when people point out, like, I first started watching your channel back when you did the rant on this or when you started this video, and people can scroll back and watch the old stuff. So I don't want to just restart the entire channel from scratch. Also, YouTube makes it really hard to do that because you can only pick one handle, and it's very difficult to transfer YouTube handles, I've discovered. So I've got the @Tailosive Tech. That's my brand. That's what people know me as. I can't just switch @Tailosive Tech to some other channel. It's not that easy. I would have to come up with a different name, and I don't want to do that. It is a pointless stat, yeah. Okay, but there were some super chats I missed. Simply Sora says, you've seen the chart of the top 10 best-selling phones of 2022 worldwide. Very interesting. The iPhone 12 was #1 by a wide margin. That makes sense. Or does it? No. Where did you see that? Simply? Sometimes what people forget is that the new iPhones come out in September, which means the majority of their time on the market is the following year. But I guess why I'm confused by that is the iPhone 12 came out in 2020. So most of its life would be in 2021. But the fact that it's number one in 2022, assuming you're correct, I don't know what the source is for that. Sometimes there's charts that say, see, they're the vast majority of sales, but then you look at the sample size and they sampled like 500 people. So I need to do some reading, or tag me on Twitter with the data on that, where they track that, because Apple doesn't disclose how many phones they sell. I don't know if that's just in the US or something, but it would make sense because Apple is still selling the iPhone 12 at a discounted rate. And because the iPhone 12 doesn't really have that many differences between the 13, we like to think there are because we're in the tech community. But yeah, I guess that explains why Apple may be so paranoid about smartphone sales getting worse and worse, because Apple's greatest competitor is not Android. Apple's greatest competitor is older iPhones, which is why I've been inspired to review the older tech, because I feel like that's what we're all competing against with these new iPhone models, with the 14 Pros and the 15 Pros. Their competitor is not the Galaxy S23 Ultra. I'm sure I don't have the chart in front of me right now, but if you're talking about the, apparently Marquez talked about it on his podcast, well, then it has to be true. I don't know what the other phones on the top 10 best-selling were, but I guarantee you it was not the Galaxy S line. Those almost never make top 10. It's almost always like Galaxy A series, the mid-range Galaxy phones that show up. Martingale says, I watched the podcast. The graphic showed the 13 is number one. Okay, so we're getting conflicting conflicting reports here. But either way, it doesn't shock me that the 6.1-inch cheaper phone is the bestseller. We've kind of figured that out since the iPhone XR days. Would a video on a new model of car with Apple's updated CarPlay system from last year's Dub go on your tech or EV channel? Well, is it an electric car or is it a gas car? If it was a gas car just running CarPlay, I guess that would go on the tech channel. But if it's an EV, it goes on the EV channel. That's what the EV channel is for. The tech channel is basically for smartphones, laptops, watches, iPads, headphones, all that kind of stuff. EV is dedicated just for electric vehicles. So that's why I won't put electric vehicle content on the tech channel. Even if it was from Apple, it would still go on the EV channel. I may advertise stuff on EV from time to time that are available on through tech, like the community post. I'll be like, hey, like I thought it was really cool that we got to interview the CEO of Aptera, so I thought that was fun and really exciting because I've never gotten to interview a CEO before. So I shared that on the Tailosive Tech community page, but it's still sharing of a link that is from the EV channel because we're talking about electric vehicles. Simply Sora says, I went back to confirm it was the 12. There were only 2 Samsungs on there, and they were both from the A series. There you go. That explains it. Chris Norton super chatted, how many subs have you got? See, well, this is the problem. That's my point, is people want that number. I can give you the hard number here. The live count. Let's see. Can bring it up. I don't think this matters. Just so we can preface this, I don't think it's important. I don't think it means anything because subscriber count doesn't translate to how much you make. It doesn't translate to how many views you get. It's quite pointless. Thank you for the super chat, Paradise. I'll read that in a second. But anyway, here you go. Real time. So before I sent out the please unsubscribe, I was at 251,200 something subscribers, and then I've been asking people to unsub, and we got it down to... I thought I might lose a couple thousand when I made that post. Originally, I actually started doing a lot of the skits on this channel intentionally because I knew that not everybody was going to like them, and I kind of wanted to weed out the people that were just watching casually or not watching much, and they were like, okay, this guy's crazy or this guy's silly. I don't want to watch him anymore. You're both, Margel and Simply Sora are both double checking and getting different answers, which is funny. But I thought that the skits would scare people away and turn me into more of a niche channel, which I would be okay with, because I'd rather have a smaller, more personal audience than just let's grow bigger and bigger and bigger. I didn't really want to be the guy obsessed with growth. I just wanted to be content with the audience we had and just form a good friendship and a good lasting community with the same people that have been watching. But actually, when I started doing the skits, the subscriber count started increasing. Actually, more people started watching the channel once I started doing that. So I was like, okay, well, the channel's still growing, which is cool, but also sub count is deceptive and making people attach too much value to it. So that's what made me want to just say, please unsubscribe. But I realize now that without context, it's kind of concerning and it makes people worried that I'm hacked or worried about my mental health. And I didn't want to create that much of a response. So I won't do that anymore. Also, it wasn't very effective. I thought that it would result in at least a couple, you would think 250,000 subscribers, you ask them to unsubscribe, you should at least get, a couple thousand, like 1%, maybe 1% of people would read that and unsubscribe. No, this was like 0.1%. So it's not a very effective way to shrink your channel, I guess. It doesn't work. I have yet to figure that out. But I've talked to a few people about it. I also realize in hindsight that it may have come across as ungrateful, or it comes across as entitled. And I also would just like to apologize for that if it came across that way to many people. That wasn't my intention. To be honest, I am completely honestly, I'm incredibly grateful for you guys and everybody watching and just all of your generous support over the years. And that doesn't just mean super chatting or signing up for the memberships, which again is amazing. And I appreciate you guys for being so incredibly generous with these memberships. Honestly, way more generous than I expected. But also just the people watching. That makes a big impact. That makes a lot of help. It helps through the ad revenue, and it helps through the channel's performance and how the algorithm recommends it and stuff. It does help out a lot. So I'm super grateful for you guys, and I love my job. This is a dream job, and the word that is echoing in my mind a lot these days that I'm trying to focus on is sustainability. I'm just trying to focus on sustaining what I have. My goal is not to grow. My goal is not necessarily really to shrink. I just mostly wanted to disconnect. I wanted people to know that I didn't care about that number. That's why I don't tell people, click the like button, click the subscribe button. I don't care about those things. I want to be able to share my ideas with other people that are interested in them. So I guess I hope that the post was not coming across to people as, oh, Drew doesn't care about all of the support he has, or he doesn't appreciate us, or that, like, I really do appreciate you guys, and I'm grateful for you all. And I hope that we can keep this up, even when the news gets dry, even when tech stuff is boring and smartphones become more iterative. I will keep trying to review the newer tech, and we can talk about leaks and rumors. I got no issue with that. I'm not saying we have to stop talking about new tech. It's just that when there's less things going on with the new tech, it's more fun to talk about some of the older tech and talk about where we've came. And I think that's Apple's biggest competitor, right? Last year's iPhone is always the biggest driving competitor to the next one. It's not Android. Is your last iPhone bad enough? I don't understand why some get millions of subscribers. You're doing this for such a long time. I don't understand why some get millions and others just a few 100,000. It's all random. I think it's all very like time and place. I don't think if I started making tech videos today, I would have the same amount of success that I have now. I think it was just the channel was in the right place at the right time, covering the right things. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for you guys. I really want to see a collab between you and Greg from Apple Explain. I thought you were going to say Greg's Gadgets, but yeah, I've never talked to him, and I don't really watch his videos, and I doubt he watches mine. So some people are like, I want you to collab, but they don't really know what that collab would be. Like, who would be asking the questions? What would we talk about? I don't know. So Paradise says, I went from the 13 Pro Max to the 13 Mini, and I've never been happier. Love the 5.4-inch and 5.8-inch screen sizes. Yeah, me too. I think, in particular, 5.8 is a really great middle ground. It's not too small, and it's not too big. And I was holding a iPhone 11 the other day, 6.1 inches, and it just reminded me how much I don't care for that size. I don't know what it is, which is funny because you guys are talking about how iPhone 13 was the best-selling phone in the world last year. That's the most popular size, which is weird. It's like, I don't like it because to me it feels too big to be comfortable, but not big enough to feel like a phablet. I like giant phones and I like mini phones, and that feels like neither. This feels a bit more mini to me, but still the screen feels large enough to get a lot of, information on it, and it still fits comfortably in my pocket. How often do I talk to other content creators in your niche? That's a good question. Not that often, if I'm being honest. Trying to think. I guess I talk more with other EV creators in my niche, if I'm being honest. I talk with who have I talked with in the last week? I talked with Chris from Dirty Tesla a few times. I talked with Warren Redlick. Had a brief Twitter interchange with Kyle Connor. But yeah, I'm not as engaged in the tech community just because I think that it's less interesting, and I don't watch that much of it, so I'm not asking that many questions, I guess. Let's see. Does the iPhone 2G work? It does turn on, yes. The main driving forces of me switching from the 12 Pro Max to the 14 Pro was the size. I grew to hate the giant size. Yeah, I feel like it's a good challenge. There's a lot of financial benefits to trying to be comfortable with the smaller phone. Usually save some money that way. It usually makes it more of a challenge for battery life, but if you're like me, you've got chargers everywhere, so it's just not that big a deal. You're in for the love, not the fame. Huge respect. Well, thank you, Daniel Holloway. That's the goal I'm trying to make. Let's see. Rewatch the clip from the podcast. It says 13. I stopped watching your channel for about 6 months and then just started watching again like 2 months ago, but that's mostly because I go through phases of the type of content that I watch. Been subscribed since 2018. That's probably a pretty common scenario. There's channels I also phase in and out of as well, so I understand. Especially with the line of tech. Like, I think the iPhones are probably the most interesting thing we talk about on this channel, just because they apply to the most number of people. Everybody has iPhones. Not everyone has iPads. Not everyone has Apple Watches and Macs, but nearly everybody's got a phone of some kind. So that only gets a big drop and a big refresh once a year. So when it's iPhone season, there's a lot more people that are going to be like, oh, well, I didn't care about the leaks and the rumors, but now that a new iPhone is out, I'm curious what Drew thinks of that, or what Drew feels about this new change they made or whatever. So it's very seasonal. I've just accepted that. Excuse me. Excuse me. This time of year is very dry and very dead. And there's not a lot of news. That's why it's kind of a meme, like yellow iPhone. That's the big news. And this is when the channel kind of goes into hibernation mode, and we can kind of get into more niche subjects and talk about other things that maybe don't perform as well or don't capture that many clicks or that much attention. But that's okay. I'm prepared for that. It's not a big deal. That's where we've tried really hard behind the scenes on, lowering expenses and being more budget oriented and investing more and building up passive income streams so that we don't need to worry about what happens if the channel doesn't perform or what happens if we don't get a certain number of views in a month. It's okay. Not a big deal because we're at very low overhead. So that allows me to have more control over the channel, because if we did have higher expenses and we did have to hit X number of views per month and then the news gets dry and dead, that's when channels get desperate, and that's when they clickbait harder, and that's when they do more sponsorships and start being a bit less picky with which sponsorships they do, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much they believe in the sponsor. It's just about we need the money. So you kind of box yourself in a corner when you raise your expenses and your living your lifestyle is too high. because you're kind of forced to run your channel. And if your channel doesn't hit those numbers, you're in trouble. So you got to start trying anything to get more clicks, and that oftentimes results in people being more dishonest or doing more fake news reports or reporting on leaks that they don't even think are true. But they act like they're true just so that they can get the views. And to me, that comes across as more dishonest and less genuine. And that basically drives a wedge between me, the creator, and you as the viewer. And I would rather that friendship get better, not worse. So that's why we've tried really hard to be conscious about our spending. And I owe pretty much all of that to my wife. She's been the amazing budgeter who keeps track of all this stuff. So I'm very grateful for her, and I'm grateful for you guys being more than generous through all the super chats and stuff. Seriously, it's been surprising how many of you just, the original concept, the original reason I wanted to offer channel memberships was because I felt bad from all the people super chatting. They would just ask like very simple questions that sometimes I couldn't answer. They were just like, oh, should I buy this or this? And I didn't have the whole equation, so I couldn't give them a good answer. But they would super chat $5 or $10 or sometimes more, and that's it. They just get one question. And I felt bad. I was like, if you're giving that much money to the channel, I want you to get a little bit more out of it. So it took some time for me to come up with some good perks, but now we've got the behind the scenes posts and the voting on which video gets made next, and the behind the scenes live streams of filming and editing, which I used to not be able to do. I couldn't live stream the editing process on my iMac Pro, but I can on my MacBook thanks to the power of the M1 Max chip. So I'm grateful that it's possible to do that now. And we've been doing moderator perks for the higher tiers and stuff, but I'm already starting to feel bad about that because there's some people that are just I'm not good with the overly generous support. I feel it just makes me feel weird when someone like that guy yesterday, it wasn't even during a live stream. I didn't even stream or anything. He just signed up for Tailosive Tech Max for no reason. I was like, bruh, what? Like, I was so confused. But either way, super grateful. And because of that, I just want you to know we're trying to be as responsible as we can. That's why if I don't have to spend money, I won't. That's why I'm willing to downgrade and kind of encourage and motivate people to consider the older tech and, cheaper hardware that you can get at a discount. I think that's more what the community needs as smartphones are getting more iterative and less exciting. It's a good time to take a step back and see, can I get by with a downgrade? Can I get by with less? It's a good financial motivation. Hopefully you save some money and the skits can make you laugh along the way. That's what I'm hoping for. If the channel doesn't perform, we could always send out the mob. That's right, James. Yeah, that's why I try not to use the confirmed. We don't have to use the confirmed terminology or the official terminology in titles that much because it's not a meme. It's the most important story of our time. What's not a meme? Let's see. I find it annoying that the SE 2022 sold as well as it did. It ranked number 9 in worldwide. Uh-oh. What happened to our bitrate? Are we okay? T-Mobile, are you wigging out? Sorry, I know I look all compressed and pixelated now. Hopefully it fixes itself. Sometimes T-Mobile wigs out, and it just takes a few seconds to recover. Do you think it's strange to only like iPads out of all Apple products? No, I know several. My cousin is like that. My cousin uses Android, and I don't think he uses a Mac, but he likes his iPad. Okay. You guys said I froze for a bit. That's good. Universal Control also wigged out too. I'm using Universal Control exclusively to monitor the chat on my iMac Pro, by the way. I can see a lot more messages this way. It's kind of nice. Marngel says that the SE 2022 ranked number 9 in worldwide sales. Not even the 13 mini reached the top 10. That does annoy me. I didn't know that. Because I hated the SE3. That was such a terrible phone. Like, they raised the price. They barely changed anything. SE2 was a big deal, They upped the camera quality. They gave it a new chip. It was a new design. SE3 should have gotten MagSafe at least, and a camera upgrade. Like, it got the A15 chip, right? Like, I don't know why they couldn't do night mode. Like, it didn't have the focus pixels, but at least when you went from the SE1 to the SE2, this got portrait mode, at least. So there was some camera upgrades, but SE3 got like nothing other than 5G, which is a scam in my head. 5G is a joke. Ugh. I guess that A15 chip really enables you to get Apple Music Sing. That's what we all need, right? 14 Plus is said to be selling more than the 13 Mini. Oh, really? By who? I hope that's not the case, because I don't want the Plus to stick around. I want the Mini to make a comeback. Let's see. I like how you don't wear branded clothes. I used to, but I realized that I felt like a walking billboard every time I did that. Let's see. The 13 Pro is at 89% battery health. I've owned it since launch. Okay, that sounds normal. I don't think that's out of the ordinary. Glad to see. Pinhead Larry's been watching since 2016. He said 16-inch MacBook Pro. There wasn't one back then. Come on, Larry. Who you calling a pinhead? I did change my desk. Yeah, I'm more closer to the wall now, which is why you see the big Tesla flag. The flag is not new. This has actually been in the exact same spot for the past, 5 years. But it's just the desk is closer to the wall now to make the room more spacious. There's a lot more walking area for lights and cameras and stuff. So that's why the angles in the background have looked quite a bit differently as well. So yeah, I downgraded my desk. I don't know if you guys caught it in yesterday's video, but I've also went back to the Series 7. I'm no longer rocking the ceramic Series 5. I just decided that for the sake of being financially responsible, I will downgrade for free, or if I make money. But I draw the line at I will not pay extra to downgrade. That just seems silly. That just seems like I'm getting more into the collector's item space. And honestly, after seeing so many people follow suit after I downgraded my iPhone 10, I saw so many people in the comments and the live stream stuff saying, I bought this old phone too, I downgraded too. And I was like, I want to be a positive influence on people. And would I think it's a good idea for someone to spend extra money on older tech that's not as good and actually lose money on that process? Yeah, probably not. I think we should reserve losing money for upgrading. I'll spend money to upgrade my phone. I got no problem with that. But to spend money to downgrade, let's not try to normalize that. That's probably not a good idea. So I'm still going to try, though. I'm still going to try to sell my Series 7. I'm still looking at a few options for that. And then maybe when I sell my Series 7, I'll consider downgrading to something that costs less than what I sell my Series 7 for, so that there's a profit for it. But I'm willing to break even. Like my downgrading my desk cost me nothing because this was free, and we're not selling the old desk. We just put it in the other bedroom. So I'm comfortable with downgrading at no additional charge, but. No, I returned the ceramic watch so we can experience what the eBay refurbished return process is like. You knew they would be expensive anyway, so I mean, if you really like that watch, keep it. I liked it, but I also like my Series 7. There's pros and cons to both, which is why I did that whole video on it. But it was kind of the acknowledgement of, okay, it cost over it cost over $400, and a lot of people were like, well, if you do keep it, I think you should pay the $80 to replace the battery in it, and then hopefully Apple swaps it out with a new one. But that $80 is going to turn this into a $500 watch from 2019. Am I going to be able to sell my Series 7 for $500? Not really. So it was just an acceptance that I would be losing money on this whole process, and I'd be ending it with a worse watch, essentially. For the sake of, well, that chassis that's made of ceramic is really cool. It was really cool, and I'm glad I got to experience it and wear it for a while. But I realized after a while that it doesn't match that well with these multicolored bands. It really matched nicely with the white sport band, but that wasn't my favorite watch band. The blue Nike band was one of my favorites, and I'm also trying out the red sport loop because I haven't worn this in a long time, and I actually really like it. But red's my favorite color, by the way. You wouldn't guess it by the channel branding. I actually made a bunch of different Tailosive channels in the old days and branded them different colors. And I thought gaming would be the biggest, so I made that red. I was way off on that one, but I feel like blue is Apple's favorite color, like in the UI menus and stuff in iOS. There's a lot of blue accents on buttons and things. So I thought because we're an Apple-focused channel, blue made the best sense for the theme of it. I completely agree. It doesn't go well with other bands. It's really good with neutral bands, like black bands or white sport bands. Or the black leather link is a really good look for but I don't have that watch band. And the one white watch band I did have was a third-party band that was included with that watch, so it didn't feel as premium as an Apple Sport band. I wanted to go back to using these, but I just didn't feel like those colorful watch bands matched with the ceramic all that great once I tried it out. And I was like, okay, I'm spending a lot of money on this watch just because I think it looks nice, but if it doesn't contrast nice with the watch bands I have, it's a cool experiment. It was a good test to see how eBay refurbished worked, and I learned a lot from it, and it was kind of a fun exercise in downgrading tech. But ultimately, I decided I would hold on to the Series 7 unless I can find a buyer for it. Then I'll consider downgrading it. But I've got a certain price in mind, and if I can't get it for that price, I think I'd rather just keep it. But we'll see what else we can downgrade. AJ says, I find it annoying because the iPhones with 60 hertz are still dominating the global top 10 best-selling smartphones. I hope you're kidding. That doesn't shock me at all because most people can't see the difference between 60 and 120, or even the people that can see the difference don't really care. So thank you for the super chat, AJ, but to me it makes perfect sense. I mean, keep in mind, every year the market for secondhand iPhones grows even more because there's increasingly more secondhand iPhones available. So I feel like there's a whole different top 10 best-selling smartphone chart that we're not even witnessing yet because there's not an easy way to track secondhand phone sales. We're just talking about what iPhones are being sold best at new, and iPhone 13 selling super well makes a lot of sense to me because that covers the basics and that covers what most average consumers are happy with. But I bet there's an even more growing number of people not buying the 13 and are just keeping their old phones or buying secondhand 13s. Let's see. Pinhead Larry. It goes super well with the white band. It does, but that wasn't a band I wanted to keep wearing long term. How is eBay refurbished? I've heard about it, but I don't want to get scammed. I usually only buy Apple products from Best Buy or directly from Apple. From what I've heard from others, including myself, eBay refurbished is a very reliable system. You have 30 days to return the item. They cover the cost of the shipping. As far as I understand it, they'll give you a full refund if you don't get what you like. But if it's eBay certified refurbished, it means it's a top-rated seller, and it comes with a 1-year warranty. So in my head, there's a very, very low likelihood of getting scammed. Even if they send you the item and it's nothing like what they described, you can return it, or eBay will even refund the money for it, depending on the condition it's in. They'll just give you a full refund. I've heard of that happening. I've only so far bought one thing on eBay, and I just returned it. So I'll report back to you if anything comes across as fishy. But I've pretty much heard nothing but good stories about eBay refurbished from the buyer's perspective. I've heard more downsides from the seller's perspective. I've heard a lot of people say on eBay that they always prioritize the buyer, not the seller. So there's times where the seller feels like they're not getting listened to by eBay, but you're probably not selling on eBay. Swappa, I've also heard, is a great website for buying tech secondhand. Once you use 120 hertz and you look back at 60 hertz, that's when you definitely see it. Some people don't. I've tried. Trust me, I've tried. As someone who genuinely appreciates 120 hertz and loves it, I have tried to get people to notice it, and I've handed them my phone and had them use it for a while, or use my iPad, and then they go back to their phone, and they don't care. They don't pick it up. Some people really don't notice. Remember when the Apple Watch got upgraded to 60 hertz and we got excited? I thought it was always 60 hertz, was it not? I don't remember that. Would I side grade to the iPad mini? Maybe, if there was I don't know. I mean, I like that my current iPad is 120 hertz. I like that it has Face ID, and I like the size. The 12.9 inches is nice as a little portable TV. This is a good size too. I like the mini form factor, but I just don't know if an iPad that's smaller would get much more use out of me opposed to just using my phone. There's just so many things that my phone can do already. Um, the iPad mini would be a little bit better, I guess, for thumbnail design and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I would probably want to break even, you know. I would probably want to sell the iPad Pro. That would cover the price of the mini, but I don't know if that downgrade. It's more of a side grade, like you said. So it's a good form factor, but what if it could fold? It can fold just once. That's the difference. Marngel says 120 hertz on phones and Macs are overrated. I notice it, but it doesn't really make 60 hertz slower to me. Yeah, I think that's probably most people. That's impressive if you can see the difference between 120 and 165. I mean, it could be placebo that you know the monitor is 165. If it was two identical monitors, one was 120 and one was 165, I'd be curious if you could see the difference between the two. Yeah, why can no other iPads get Face ID? I wish, but iPads are already running out of features to come up as this is a pro. They have to be very careful to not cannibalize each other because there's honestly very little reason to spec for the higher end iPads if you start bringing down those pro features to the lower end models. At least we got center stage, right? That's a perk. I use my iPad mini for Zoom calls. Well, there you go. For the basics, I could get that done on my current iPad Pro, but I honestly don't use it very much. It's below the desk. I use it for thumbnails and updating the outro credits and stuff, but I could probably do that on my phone if I really needed to. Okay, so there was a few non-techie questions that the Pro members asked, so I figured I should probably address those as well because they are pitching in some extra support. But Alpha says, a ridiculous question. Who makes the best milkshake? Whose milkshake brings all the boys to the yard? I don't know. Probably Dairy Queen. They've got some good milkshakes. Sonic has some great milkshakes. I haven't been there in a while. I haven't had any desserts for the past month. But they have these, what do they call them? Like concrete shakes, or milkshakes that are like super thick and super hard. It's basically just like eating ice cream. So I guess Sonic would be my answer. Let's see. Simply Sora says, on a couple occasions I've checked my settings because something felt a bit off and it was because it went back to 120. That is impressive. Yeah, some people can really pick that up, I guess. Back market is pretty good. I got my iPhone 7 Plus Jet Black. Ooh, that's a dangerous phone to buy secondhand, dude. That's a phone that can easily pick up tons of scratches. Apple had to put a warning on the iPhone configurator page for people that selected Jet Black because they were so worried. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Alexander Ernst, thank you for 15 months of support on Tailosive Tech Plus. That's insanely generous. Thank you. Drew, why not get the new SE watch? I've seen it for as low as like $219 and outside of always on display and EKG. I think you mean ECG. It's basically a Series 8. Sounds like telephone backgrounds on a clear day. If you're mad that I didn't read your question, well, I'm mad that you didn't watch yesterday's video where I explicitly explained why I don't recommend the Apple Watch SE 1 or 2 to anybody. It's that freaking glass. I don't mind aluminum. I actually think aluminum as a chassis is a really good... I prefer it to stainless steel. You get that finish. It doesn't pick up a lot of fingerprints. I really like aluminum as a chassis material. What I don't like about aluminum Apple Watches is the stupid Ion X glass. This is why I personally have stopped buying and don't use aluminum Apple Watches anymore, is because the Ion X glass picks up so many scuffs and so many scratches so easily because unlike your phone, this is something you're wearing and it's on the outside of your arm. You're moving your arm around if you're moving around a lot or you're banging your watch against door frames and you're outside, you're working on projects, you know, mowing the lawn and stuff, or your watch scrapes against the side of things. The sapphire glass, super rigid, super durable, incredibly hard to scratch. I have honestly never seen a scratched sapphire glass Apple Watch display. My wife is still rocking a sapphire glass Series 3, and there is not a single imperfection on that glass, which is why I did the whole yesterday's video in which I mentioned that the Apple Watch Series 5 you can find in stainless steel with the sapphire glass, which is super rigid, super durable. You can find those for under $200. So I don't know why you're saying like you can get a SE for $219. Okay, I'm gonna pay extra for a watch that has the same display, less health features, and less durability. Heck no. Steel watches with sapphire glass, in my opinion, is the way to go. Oh yeah, I used to only get the aluminum watches. The first Apple Watch Sport that ever came out, that was the only one I could afford at the time, so I got the Sport. After that, I got the aluminum Series 2. And I was kind of getting into the habit of upgrading the Apple Watch annually because I always would have so many scuffs and scratches on the glass. I was like, I'm sick of this. I don't want the Ion X glass anymore. So not the last one, but I got the Series 3 in aluminum, and particularly at that time, something happened. Like I was moving I was moving out of my parents' house and then moving into my first apartment and everything. And I was just moving so much furniture that Series 3, within the first 1 month of usage, was incredibly demolished. Like there was so many scratches and scuffs on that display. And I noticed them. I could see them every time I looked at the watch. So within just a couple months of buying that Series 3, I can't remember what I did. I either sold it or I traded it in somewhere, and I used the credit towards a space black steel Series 3 so that I could get the sapphire glass because I saw other people bringing it up. I was like, I'm really annoyed by this glass, and people are like, this is why we buy the steel watches, which I wasn't really in love with the steel chassis. I don't like the glossy look. I prefer the matte finish, but I didn't want to pay the price. But once I realized that was how you get the sapphire glass, ever since then, I usually spec up for the higher tiered Apple Watches, but they cost a lot. So that's why I usually recommend buy them refurbished, buy them secondhand. You can find them for cheaper. Steel watch is cheap. You can find a steel Series 5 for less than an SE, is my point. So that's why I disagree with Ninja Squid saying steel watch is too expensive, aluminum is fine. You can save money and get a more durable watch. That's all I'm pitching you. That's all. Michael Brown, thank you for the super chat. He says, do you want Apple to make a foldable? I love my Z Fold 4. I probably wouldn't use it, but yes. The short answer is yes. I don't think it would sell at high volume. Already we're finding out in today's stream, the iPhone 13 is by far outselling all the other iPhones. So if you can barely get people to buy your $1,000, well, I mean, a lot of people are buying them, but if you can't get people to buy your Pro iPhones, how are you going to convince people to buy a $1,500 or $2,000 iPhone? I just think it would be interesting for the tech community, because the tech community is progressively running out of exciting information. And I think that we have a lot of momentum because there's a lot of smartphone buyers, more so than EV buyers, because EVs are more expensive and not as many people buy cars. But lots of people buying phones and watches and iPads and stuff more frequently as well. They upgrade them every 3 to 4 years, whereas cars are more to every 10 years or more. There's a lot of momentum, but there's not a lot of distance left, in my opinion. I think every generation of iPhone is going to get more and more incremental, less and less exciting, and there's going to be less and less things to talk about. So for that reason, I think Apple making a foldable would be really interesting, because Apple tends to get software a lot better than anybody. So would the Apple Foldable have a calculator app, or would it run iOS or iPadOS? Those kinds of, I think it would be an interesting implementation. Having tried out multiple Galaxy Z Folds and Flips and reviewed them in the past, I think the hardware is fine. I honestly don't think there's anything really wrong with the hardware. It just felt like the form factor of a folding phone is not that useful. It's not that helpful. It's not a feature that people put a lot of money towards or a priority in. Like, I want to make sure my next phone folds. It's like, I don't think people care. I don't think it's a problem of durability. I don't even think it's a problem of cost. I don't think that foldables are too expensive. Honestly, I think the Z Flip is pretty reasonably priced for what it is. And the Z Folds have come down in price a bit too, I think. I don't know. I don't follow them very closely. But I feel like Samsung is not very good at convincing a large number of people to buy $900+ phones. Like we saw in the best-selling phones chart, there was no Galaxy S phone of any kind. There was no S23, S23 Plus, S23 Ultra. None of those made the top 10. What made the top 10 was the Galaxy A series of phones, and that's been the case for years, by the way. That's not a new thing. So likewise, that's why Galaxy Folds and Flips are not high on the best sellers. Apple, on the other hand, it dominates the premium smartphone segment. Apple is like 80% market share if you're just talking about phones that cost over $800. Apple dominates that space, and foldables like the Z Fold are inherently more expensive. So the logic of it in my head is, well, Apple would convince more people to buy a foldable than anybody could, because there's more people paying top dollar for iPhones. So I think it would be interesting to see their approach, how they would price a foldable, how they would implement the software when unfolded versus folded up. I think it would probably be the best foldable just because of the software implementation. But are they going to? Likely not. I think it's too small a market. Samsung's not getting massive numbers off of foldables compared to what, relatively they're small sales. Like, sure, they might be in the single-digit millions, but Apple's interested in the dozens of millions. And in Apple's world, the iPhone 13 mini and 12 mini didn't sell all that great. And yet the mini iPhone still sold like 10 times as good as the folding phones did. So my guess is Apple's just going to see it as too niche and too small a market for them to go after, which is a shame because I would like to see Apple make one. But yes, I would like them to make one. Let's see. The last aluminum watch I did get because red is my favorite color, as you guys know. When the Apple Watch Series 6 came out, it did have this matte red aluminum option, which looked beautiful. And I had always wanted a matte red Apple Watch. So once they showed off the Series 6, I still had my Steel Series 4. I didn't care about the blood oxygen or the S6 chip. I wasn't interested in any of that. I just really liked the look. I was like, I would have bought a red Series 4 if they just came out with it 2 years later. But I was like, here's the deal. If I can sell my Series 4 and cover the price of the Series 6, then I will keep the red Series 6 because I just loved that look so much. I love the red accents. So I bought it, and I sold my Series 4, and I actually made money. So to return and not keep the Series 6, I would have lost money, essentially. So I was profiting off of that upgrade. Because I had the Steel Series 4, and I found someone that wanted it at a really high price, or a good price, I should say. Not really high, but it was just a fair selling point, and they wanted a new watch anyway, so they were like, I'll just take yours. So I sold it, and I was like, okay, I'll keep my Series 6. But once again, after a year of wearing the Series 6, I could see all the scuffs and scratches, and I was like, okay, I'm reminding myself now why I didn't buy the aluminum watches before, and I've decided that just having a steel watch with a red band is a better compromise to get that red accent rather than... It would be cool if I could get like red titanium, or just Apple just put the sapphire glass on the red aluminum watch. That would have been perfect. It would have aged so much better. But yeah, they didn't do that. I have the aluminum SE. There's a few scratches, but nothing that really looked noticeable unless you really look. Well, how would you like it if there was no scratches, even if you really looked, and you saved money? That's my pitch to why you should consider, just like I showed in yesterday's video on eBay, refurbished. You can find Steel Series 5s for like $180. The glass that's actually problematic is the screen glass on iPhone 12 and newer. Constant deep scratching, even with no contact with rough or abrasive scratches. I genuinely want ceramic shield gone. I think that has more to do with making it more shatterproof. So there's a balance that Apple has to decide with all of the glass they use. Typically, as you make glass harder, it's easier to shatter because it doesn't flex, it doesn't bend. It's very rigid. When it's really solid like that, it's very hard to scratch because it's so hard. It's very strong, but once it drops, once it takes an impact, it's a lot easier to shatter. So ceramic shield results in the glass being a lot more fragile to scratches, but it's a lot harder to shatter when it gets dropped, which is why Apple considers it, 4 times less likely to shatter in a drop. So Apple's logic of it is, well, if you're worried about scratches, in scuffs, get a screen protector. But if we default to having a more flexible glass, then it won't shatter as much. I'd much rather have a harder glass than glass that scratches for no reason. Well, just remember that's going to result in more phones shattering because people drop their phones. The reason the sapphire glass works on Apple Watch is because you wear a watch, you don't hold it. When you're wearing a watch, they are far less likely to drop. You don't drop your Apple Watch too much. It occasionally happens, but the ratio of phones dropped to watches dropped is like 10-1 or 20-1 or something. So that's why the sapphire glass makes a lot of sense on something you wear when it gets passed by things all the time and scratches against your desk or against, on the beach in the sand or something. You want this to be hard, even though the sapphire is more prone to shattering. So if I drop this Apple Watch with the sapphire glass, it's more likely to shatter than an aluminum Apple Watch with Ion X glass. But because most people aren't dropping their watch, ends up not really mattering all that much. So that's why, by the way, they do sapphire glass on the camera bump, because they don't want the camera to shatter. But they also, they don't want the camera lens to scratch, is what I mean. But it does mean that the camera lenses are more likely to shatter in a drop. But the rest of the phone, they use more Ion X style. I literally don't even notice the glass unless I really look for it. Plus, I'm the type of person who likes things to look used. Well, then you'll even love buying eBay secondhand. Even more so, Shawnee. If you like things to look used, even more good reason to buy the steel. I don't understand not getting a screen protector for your phone. Yeah, the glass is getting stronger, but screen protector can fix that as long as it's a good one. Yeah, if you're a bit clumsy, or not clumsy, but just if you're accustomed to dropping your phone, or you just accept that you will, most people do, there's no shame in that, then it's a good idea. I don't use a screen protector on mine because I just don't like the way that makes the phone look, or it makes the phone feel. I don't like that extra edge popping up on the sides, but I'm kind of weird and techie like that. So I don't know what it is, but over the years I've just trained myself not to drop my phone, so I don't drop it. And I've to this day never broken an iPhone screen, even though I don't put cases on them. Let's see. Would I ever consider trying to build a PC for the experience as like a one-off video? I'd love to see your take on that and what would go in that process for you. I've considered it and realized that it would not be worth it. For one, it's going to cost more than an average tech video is going to cost, which means that unless the video performs a certain... Even a cheap PC, what is it? I don't follow... For one, I hate Windows, which is another reason why I don't want to build a PC. I love Mac OS, and I don't see myself moving to Linux or Windows or anything because of how I use my iMac Pro without a keyboard and mouse, because I have universal control. If I had some other computer, for one, I don't have the desk space for it, nor do I have room for it in the bedroom that I would put it. But it would cost money. I wouldn't use it. I don't like the reason I buy Apple hardware is because I like the way the software just works. It all just seamlessly turns on and everything just works together. And I love AirDrop. So it's like everything I love about my computers would be gone, and it would take longer to assemble. And there's like 50 million YouTube channels that do PC builds and stuff. It's not like it's not like I would have some unique perspective. I mean, we did one last year, didn't we? My friend Ross was building his PC. And he was like, do you want to do a stream or something while I put it together? And I said, sure. And to be honest, a lot of you guys aren't going to like what I'm about to say. So maybe this will get people to unsubscribe. I don't like PC towers either. I don't like the big bulky things. It's just so much more power consumption, and it takes up so much more space. I love that my computer can I just close it and I can take it with me. They also have so many lights on them, so much extra space that doesn't need to be there. I'm an efficiency guy. That's why I like my Apple Silicon and my laptops and stuff. But the community for PC building feels very toxic to me every time I dabble in it. I've gotten into it occasionally, and it's very elitist. There's a lot of people that are just like, yeah, you gotta have this, you gotta have this. If you don't have this, that sucks, or this sucks, or this sucks, or this is good for my gaming, and because it's good for my gaming, everyone that doesn't buy what I buy is buying the wrong thing. That's where the whole term of like PC master race comes from. is like this entitlement thing of just like, I built it with my own two hands. It's mine. I built it. And I don't know. I feel like the community is very, we just dabbled in it lightly last year because my friend wanted to build a PC anyway. He wasn't building it for me or for the channel or anything. He was just like, I'm going to build a PC. You can document the experience if you want. And I was like, sure, we'll do a live stream. And when we were doing the stream, my good friend Ross, he's built several PCs before. He's worked on computers before. He knows how to upgrade them. He knows how to assemble them. He knows where everything... He's fully more immersed in that community than I am. But there was so much critiquing during that whole live stream. So many people in the chat that are like, "Yeah, you're doing it wrong. You don't like it. I mean, you can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. He doesn't understand." And they were just so demeaning to him and complaining to him the whole time. The computer's fine. He put it together. It worked. It's still functioning. He still uses it. Like, it worked. He did it his way. Maybe some people would have assembled it in a slightly different order or something, or preferred it. He picked different parts or something with it. But there was just so much toxicity. And I'm not saying that the Apple community is not toxic either. There's definitely a lot of toxicity in all tech communities. But I just noticed a lot of it in particular from the PC building space. Like that they... For one, they talk about why upgradability and repairability is important, but then they also love to build a new PC every year with all new parts, and as soon as there's a new processor, okay, throw out the old one, build a whole new one. It's all got to be RGB and all got to have these fancy cooling systems, and they just decorate them like... I don't know. I'm not in that community, and I don't envy that community, I guess. I'm not like... Whenever I briefly dabble into it and see what people are talking about, I'm like, yeah, this just feels weird. I don't need to be a part of this. So I would basically spend a bunch of money, probably not make a computer I enjoy or want to use, and I would just make a bunch of people mad at me because I would probably, if I was doing it, I would try to build it on a budget, and then everyone would be mad that I bought budget parts, and they would be mad that I didn't buy a $2,000 graphics card or something. Been considering building just like a cheapo $300 PC just for the sake of having a Windows machine. I love my Mac, but there's some apps, simple games that won't run, or you need parallels. I've tried it. I've tried to do that, like, oh, I'll do a PC on the side thing, and it always went horribly for me. I had horrible driver corruption with Windows and horrible boot up times and random restarts, and it just didn't work. And I gave it several attempts, and it never went the way I wanted it to, so I just decided, yep, I'm a Mac guy. I'm okay with accepting that. Yes, Fizzwizzle, gatekeeping, that's the term. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on, I think, in the PC community, where they kind of frown down upon anybody that buys or uses inferior tech or doesn't use what they like. Feels very elitist. And I'm not saying Apple people don't do the same thing. It's just... I'm at least engaged in the Apple community because I like Apple hardware and Apple software, and I enjoy talking about the leaks and the rumors, and I enjoy reviewing the older hardware and talking about how the new software works on the old hardware because it affects me and it affects my personal life, so I feel more involved with it. The Windows PC, I don't feel involved with that at all. I don't play games. I'm not a gamer. I don't like working on things myself with my own two hands. That's why I bought a Tesla, is because I don't like fixing things myself. I don't like, repairing things myself. I'd rather buy something that costs a little bit more just to know that I won't have to work on it and I won't have to repair it myself. I'll spend extra money so I don't have to worry about that. You're trying to make a bootable USB? Let me give you 940 pop-up windows from Windows Defender and Windows Update. Yeah, no. No, thank you. Let's see. I've never been in that community, but I'm not at all surprised. Joshua says, I hate Windows 2, 10, and 11. When Windows sees you're trying to do anything, it decides to start giving you pop-ups and balloons and constant interruptions. Mac OS isn't perfect, but yeah, I definitely feel like there's more of that with Windows. James says, I don't hate Windows, I just learned to despise certain things about it. I don't understand how people like to use a trackpad. It's incredibly hard compared to a mouse, which makes your hand hurt very fast, right? You're holding it wrong. I don't think so. I think there's an easy way to get by with I use a trackpad a lot. Maybe if it's a bad trackpad, I've used and experienced a lot of horribly made trackpads, but Apple trackpads are amazing. Also, to me, it would be incredibly wasteful to buy or build a whole PC because I'm planning on spending several months out of this year away from out of the country, actually, on a big trip we're planning, and I need to be able to work off of a laptop. And I considered last year, because I've had it on my mind for a while now, that the tech community is getting more and more boring. There's less and less things going on. There's less news. All the tech is getting more iterative. So I was like, how do I keep things interesting on the tech channel? For a while, I was considering and debating, saying like, okay, if the next iPhone isn't USB-C, I'm going to ditch Apple. I'm going to build a non-Apple ecosystem and try to experience the advantages that Android and Windows has to offer. So I was specking out and looking for laptops because obviously I can't take a desktop PC with me, and a lot of the places I'm going aren't going to have great internet, so it's not like I can just do remote desktop viewer. No, I'm not going anywhere with good internet. So I need something native. I need something that's efficient with good battery life that can edit a lot of videos. I looked around at the Windows laptop space, and it's pretty sucky. There's really nothing out there that competes with my MacBook Pro that even comes close. Anything that would be remotely comparable would still be $4,000 or $5,000 and would still have half the battery life and take twice as long to export videos. So once I just took a step back and realized, like, okay, I'm going to be spending more money on inferior hardware that will make my life harder and will make work take longer. This doesn't seem like a good idea. I don't want to do this. So even if I spent $300 on a PC build for the channel, it would just sit here for months and not get used. If you did a build, you could get one of more budget focused, has no RGB or does what you want. That would be cool, but I understand not wanting to. I don't think that video would do very well, personally. I think a bunch of people would be mad at me for not buying the right hardware, and I wouldn't use it for anything. I just don't play video games, to be honest with you. I know some people are accustomed to everybody playing it, but I'm busy, and I like, when I'm not working, being able to spend time with friends and family members, and most of the friends and family members I spend time with don't play video games. So I think if you're not engaged in the gaming community, it's a lot harder to be invested or interested or to care much about Windows machines or building a PC, because there's a certain amount of passion that comes from a topic or a subject when you're invested in it. You know, like I use my Apple Watch on a daily basis. I use my iPhone and my MacBook on a daily basis. So I have a lot of thoughts on how it works or how it should work or problems that they have that I want fixed. And because I'm passionate about it, you'll provide insight that is hopefully valuable to people, right? If you're not passionate about something, but you're trying to fake interest in it for the sake of this will get me more views or this will get more eyes on the channel, you're not going to pick up on little details or this is how I wish the hardware would work. This is what I like about it. This is what I don't like about it. Because if you're not really invested in it, if you're not really passionate about it, you're not going to come up with a unique perspective because it's a fake. It's a fake. You're wearing a mask, and people can pick that up. This is why I gave up on the gaming channel. I used to try to do gaming, and pretty much the only time I played video games was when I was making content for Tailosive Gaming, because I just thought, oh yeah, people do gaming videos, I can do gaming videos too. I was trying to have a whole network of all these channels and trying to keep them semi-active, and I just realized that no, people could tell I'm not really invested in the game. I'm not really passionate about it. So that's why the gaming channel never really took off. It never really got much traction. It was a nice little side gig, a nice little side hobby. We got, some following, but it never got as big as tech because the passion and the interest wasn't there. Whereas EV, which came along way later than gaming, found a whole separate audience that is honestly quite different from the tech channel, and I was passionate about it, and I had interest in it, and I would pick up on things that I felt like other people weren't bringing attention to, so my perspective was, at least, I would hope, I don't know if it is, but I would hope at least somewhat unique, and that kept people coming back. So when the passion is there, the audience will follow. If you're trying to fake passion, I don't think the audience will follow. So that's just, I could be totally wrong on that, but that's my overall take on why you shouldn't try to force yourself to get into things that you're not really interested in, because you'll probably not get that much of a return on it, at least on the YouTube space. Don't do the ecosystem change. You'll go crazy and get gray hair. No, I've decided against that. I also realized that was kind of a stupid bet because now it feels very likely that the iPhone is getting USB-C. So for me to say, I'll switch away from Apple if it doesn't have Type-C is kind of like, okay, true. Big whoop. It's pretty much confirmed to happen. It's not confirmed, but others may call it that. You can likely find more powerful laptops than the MacBook Pro, but they'll also be heavier, thicker, hotter, and last less than half as long. Yeah, that doesn't count to me. That's like, to me, that's not a laptop. It's if your laptop battery life is 30 minutes, that's just a desktop with a battery attached to it. How dare you want to spend time with your wife instead of playing video games? I know. There's so many TV shows that we can't even keep up with because we don't have the time. Now I'm supposed to add in video games on top of that? Hirasawa, why do you say attempted to game for 24 hours straight? We did that. We did a 24-hour live stream on the gaming channel. We succeeded. Don't say attempted. I worked so hard. I'll never do that again. That was so miserable, and I felt horrible by the end of it. But I said we would do a 24-hour gaming stream, and we did it. And it was mission accomplished. We felt horrible by the end, but we did do it. Let's see. Members only stream, avoid most of the backlash. About what? Simply Sora. A members only what? Michael Lazito, he's normally pretty chill, but I wonder if he maybe had an internet issue where he said hi like 5 times in a row. Hi! There's a subset of PCs beyond gaming that would be interesting. Personally, I don't see much point. What else beyond gaming is there that PCs are good at? It's like it requires a larger upfront investment. So I'm not like gonna reveal all of the nitty-gritty specs, but I'm basically trying to say even a video of me building a $300 PC would take time to film, edit, buy the parts, assemble them, and I would still probably lose money on the entire process. Productivity PC builds are very different from gaming ones. Yeah, but what am I going to be able to showcase that someone else already hasn't, I guess is my point. Again, I just don't want to fake interest in something. I think if you're just using a PC, what are you using the PC for if not gaming? Is it software engineering? I would say Macs are still going to win out in that, or at least Linux with, Xcode. And in that case, I'm going to recommend M1 Mac Mini. You can find those for cheap now, and they'll probably last a lot longer, and they'll use much less energy than a big PC is going to use. Is it possible to family set up Apple Watch with one iPhone, enable cell plan on watch without number, share, and then unpair from iPhone and pair to another? Ooh, unpair. I don't know. I think you kind of have to keep it paired with that cell plan. I would love an opinion on your experience with doing it in general and how easy or hard it was. Well, I can tell you now as someone who has witnessed PC building and come close. I almost built my own PC back in 2014, and then I found a already built one that my friend was trying to sell for a low price, so I just bought it from him. Still typically better at game development and 3D modeling stuff. Yeah, but if I'm not invested in that stuff, I'm not going to know which ones are good. I'm saying leave that to the professionals, the people who know what 3D modeling stuff is required, the people that know what game development stuff is required. Let them do the PC builds. Why do you want the guy that's not interested in the PCs to do it for you? I don't know. It's like asking your plumber to do your roofing, I guess, is how I feel about it. And I personally feel that way, Ninja Squid, is that like Macs pretty much beat Windows at everything that isn't gaming or 3D modeling, which I do neither. So there's so many channels covering that stuff. If I don't think I can add a unique perspective or an opinion of any value, because spoiler alert, if I did that video, the end result would probably be me telling you to buy a Mac and that it was hard and I didn't like it. So based on my personality being the Apple sheep guy that prefers the software to just work out of the box and the native experience, and I don't like the window driver corruption. I don't like the inconsistent updates, and I don't like all the hardware being from all these different places, all having to work together and getting the drivers installed. I value my time, and I don't want to spend all that time building it. So my opinion is going to be, yeah, just buy a cheap M1 Mac Mini, and you'll probably get better performance, and it can fit on your desk, and you'll get more USB-C ports, and it'll be more efficient, and it'll have Mac OS, which will get software updates that are reliable and good for many years to come, and you'll get AirDrop and all that. That's probably going to be my outcome. The only difference is I could spend $300 and tell you that exact same thing again, or I could just tell you it now and not spend the $300. Dedicated GPUs will always win out, at least for now. Well, it depends on what you're doing. Because, again, I don't think there's a... I think people just get too obsessed with raw power, and they don't think about the efficiency enough. That's something that I think has really gravitated me more towards electric vehicles, is because the whole reason we're switching to electric vehicles is because they're more energy efficient. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Aptera's. They're focusing on making the most energy efficient vehicle possible. So efficient that it can charge itself off of sunlight. I'm like, you can't do that with any other car. Definitely not with gas. Definitely not with hydrogen fuel cell vehicles or anything else. Only an electric car can be self-powered, and only a hyper-efficient, super aerodynamic car can be solar-powered. That's why I'm interested in Aptera, and same thing when it comes to battery life. Like, people are on the go now, with air travel being cheaper than it's ever been, and more people wanting to work on the go and see more places and visit friends and family members. You know, as the cost of living in cities rises higher and higher to the point of being unreasonable, it's resulting in more people moving away from big cities and moving more towards rural communities, which are more affordable. But that results in there being a greater likelihood of commuting, or greater likelihood of family members moving away. That's happened in my family. So we're planning lots of trips. Like, I've got a father-in-law in Australia and a mother-in-law in the Philippines, and I've got my parents in another state. So we're just accepting, and I think lots of people are accepting of this. Randy, my good friend, is in the same boat. There's going to be a lot of traveling in our future, and I think this is a good thing. And when you're traveling a lot and going to be working or getting stuff done away from your desk, away from home, the value of a desktop is progressively smaller, especially now with ARM and Apple Silicon getting more and more performance, to the point now where I can have a little MacBook that fits in my backpack outperform my old iMac Pro from 2017, and it smokes it, even though my iMac Pro has a dedicated GPU, my MacBook Pro doesn't. The point is, whether or not you need RTX 4090 levels of performance, or M1 Max is good enough for you, or M2 Max is good enough for you, the point is, one of those things you can take with you and use away from a charger, use at an airport, use on a plane, use away from an outlet for extended periods of time. One of those you can't. So, yes, there are edge cases where it's like, okay, my professional job is 3D modeling, and I need to be able to render the most complicated, intricate, super detailed CAD files possible. So I need a desktop with a discrete GPU. Okay, there are people that do that, but I don't think they're the majority. I think there's a growing number of people that are more comfortable with buying laptops that weren't before, because of how good the battery life is now, because of how good the performance is now. So the amount of energy it takes to get a task done is a progressively more important factor as time goes on, as more people are traveling and more people are visiting new places and not just stuck to their desk all the time. So as our lifestyle has opened up to be more travel dependent, a laptop has become progressively more like, no, this is, if you don't have a good laptop for me to offer, I'm not interested, because a computer that is stuck to my desk is progressively less and less valuable. So again, that's why, to me, just saying, well, it's really powerful by itself if you have a dedicated GPU is like, okay, but what number of people are actually utilizing that number of power? Every year, I think it's less. There's like a law of diminishing returns. It's like, just because there's a lot of people editing 4K video now does not mean in a couple of years we're all going to be editing 16K video, because the human eye can't see that many differences. And software code compiling or how many tracks you can fit in Logic for audio engineering. You can fit that on more and more uh, laptop-sized workflows. Um, how much people in the PC space claim how much better Intel and AMD are nowadays, but then ignore how much power those newer chips consume. Yeah, it's like, tell me you don't pay for the power bill without telling me you don't pay for the power bill. It actually starts to stack up when you think about it. Like, Apple said that the Mac Studio, compared to an equally spec'd PC, will save you 1,000 kilowatt hours a year. Let's say you're paying, what's an average, a good average, maybe 15 cents a kilowatt hour. Times 1,000, that's $150 a year extra you're paying on electricity for a PC with specs close to that of a Mac Studio. Now, there's probably PCs that pull a lot more power than the Mac Studio pulls, and those are probably going to be costing you $200, $300 a year in electricity costs. So the efficiency, I think, is a more important focus rather than just the raw performance, because I don't think the future is going to be everyone playing video games at 8K, 120 FPS. That's why the mobile gaming space makes more money than the AAA, desktop gaming. I love bringing that up because PC gamers seem to hate that fact. They're just like, well, mobile games aren't real games. It's like, well, they're bringing more money than yours. Yeah, that free Candy Crush app that your mom's playing, that's a more profitable business than your, Red Dead Redemption, all that stuff. Drew's an EV owner because he knows his exact electricity rates. Well, I do, but that's not it. I rounded down. My electricity rates are very high. I don't pay 15 cents a kilowatt hour, but I was going for like an average. Some parts of the country pay like 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Some people pay 15, some people pay 10. I pay like 24. So I wanted to give a PC the benefit of the doubt, so I rounded down to 15 cents. But yeah, I think over time more and more people will become aware of that. Is just like how, before the automobile was commonplace, I doubt very many people knew what the price per gallon of gasoline was. Like, do you think in the 1850s or 1890s they were talking about what the price a gallon of gas cost? No, because most people weren't really using gasoline or oil or that much. But as more and more people are switching to electric vehicles and more people will be DC fast charging them at different locations and comparing the prices, price per kilowatt hour is probably going to become a factoid that more and more people start to dwell on. What does it cost at home? What does it cost on the trip? Right now, it's maybe not as commonplace, but yeah. Minecraft is on mobile. That's true. PC gamers should be excited to see that there's a very easy way to access and enjoy games. So dumb. Well, they just like to write off things, I noticed. Like a lot of that's not real gaming. It's like, well, unfortunately, that's most games, whether you like it or not. Marngel says, I noticed how people in the PC space claim how much better Intel... Oh, sorry, I read that. I just want an M2 MacBook Pro that looks like the old 16-inch one, touch bar and all. They are so much cooler looking, and the touch bar is so nice. Maybe I'd upgrade if they did that. Yeah, there's a lot of loyalists out there that really like the touch bar, aren't they? Will you be upgrading this year? I don't know. That's entirely up to Apple. I have decided after last year that I will no longer preemptively dictate whether or not I will upgrade. It depends on how my iPhone 10 does, and it depends on how good the iPhone 15 is. At first glance, based on the rumors of the iPhone 15, nothing about it seems upgrade worthy to me. I plan on keep using my iPhone 10, but I fully admit and acknowledge there could be something the iPhone 15 has that's really cool that I didn't expect that convinces me to upgrade, and maybe I will. I don't know. It just depends. I'm gonna let Apple make their case. I'm gonna let Apple try to sell me on it. I'm not gonna try to make up my mind before Apple's even unveiled the phone. There could be all kinds of software features or new hardware abilities that we don't know about yet. So I haven't decided. When it comes out, maybe I'll decide. One, get a cheap $600 Windows laptop that does everything. It does not need power. It needs internet. $600. I would say get an M1 MacBook Air before. I don't know if any. You can get M1 MacBook Airs for under $700, and they'll last a lot longer than the Windows laptop, and they'll probably have a much better battery life. I care about USB-C. It's just I wouldn't utilize it. I wirelessly charge my phone. I have a wireless charger at my desk by my bed, and in my car. So everywhere I go, my phone basically is charging inductively. So I think if you're going to have a port on a phone, it should be Type-C, but that doesn't mean, I know, I've never said I will upgrade purely because of Type-C. PCs and game consoles will always beat mobile gaming if mobile games continue to be the FPT and pay-to-win garbage. There's some good ones out there, but what do you mean by they'll always beat mobile gaming? By what? Like by your imaginary chart of success? If you're just talking revenue-wise, no, there's still... Mobile gaming is still winning. Mobile gaming makes way more money than PCs and game consoles. Far more profitable business. So if we're just talking revenue, which is more objective, no, they're not going to beat out mobile gaming. But if you're talking about your definition of fun, then sure, I guess that's more subjective. But you can pick anything for that. Apple is number one in mobile gaming now. Yeah, that's what there's a great Polymatter video from years ago. I don't know if he's even active anymore, but he did a video called Apple is a Gaming Company. And I love that video because people don't like to think of Apple as a gaming company, or they like to think, oh, Apple doesn't really focus much on gaming. And I'm like, they make more money on games than Steam does. They make more money on gaming than all these other platforms. It's just not the hardcore gaming you think. A lot of people are like, well, real gaming has to be, I spent $70 on the game and I built the PC myself and the PC cost $2,000. If I'm not dropping all this money on the gaming hardware, then it's not real gaming. None of that stuff matters. I agree. Most mobile games are corporate junk meant to make money with no regard for fun or consumer enjoyment. Well, why do they make so much? It's because they're cheap and accessible. They're efficient. It all comes down to the efficiency. You can install a free game on a $200 phone, and the free games are making more money than the paid games. Isn't that bizarre? Isn't that kind of funny? Mobile gaming is still gaming. That's why we call it mobile gaming. Tim Cook himself could come to my house and remove the port on my iPhone and nothing would change. Yeah, I wouldn't upgrade simply for Type-C either, but I still think it's a good idea. AAA games and quality indie titles are more quality and more worth it in terms of experience than most mobile games. To you, worth is all subjective. That's all personal preference stuff. That's not objective stats. If you're talking subjectively, yeah, you can say such and such is better than whatever, but that doesn't mean it brings in more revenue, which means that the general public doesn't put as much value in it as you do. The game is still on mobile. All I see with Minecraft coming onto a phone means that better games are coming. Yeah, well, with the silicon being as efficient and as capable as it is, it gets better and better. Graphically, it gets better, but yeah, there will always be some argument as to why the PC or the console has the exclusive or the title they want. There's more quality without pay to win or other things, just cosmetic purchases. Yeah, I'm just saying that one makes more. It's just an objective fact. Mobile gaming makes more money than non-mobile gaming. That's all I'm saying. Which means that the general gaming market values convenience and efficiency more so than performance or quality of game. Due to heat dissipating nature of high wattage devices, you will never get a gaming laptop and good aesthetic laptops like MacBooks. I mean, I've seen some pretty decent looking gaming laptops, but the battery life always takes a huge hit, and they always have these laptop version GPUs that don't perform as good as the desktop. So it's like, does it really have a 4090? Cloud gaming can be good if you have really solid internet, but a lot of people don't. Just got in. Why are people talking about Minecraft just arriving on mobile? It's been there for some... Well, we're on the subject. I'm trying to prove the point that mobile gaming makes more money than console gaming, and it doesn't matter that the games aren't as high quality. It's just this is what the public prioritizes, and I'm trying to make the case that desktops are a dying market, and that with laptops getting armed, our culture is shifting to being more open and more comfortable with traveling, visiting more places, and being able to take your work with you, take your machine with you. So over time, I think there's more and more of a push towards, like, if it can't be done via mobile, then it's not worth doing. Or you could do it. It's just not. It's just more and more of a niche market to just say, well, this is only available on a desktop, or this can only be achieved with a desktop. I hate those spaceship-looking laptops. Me too. In the East Coast, Verizon offers fiber internet with 5 megabit. Yeah, I know. There's lots of fiber internet available across the country. Not here, but it's out. It's out there. Do you think Apple will ever unlock HDMI 2.1 for the M1 generation? No, it's a hardware lock. It's not a software thing. It's a certain number of video controllers that the HDMI 2.1 has. So, unfortunately, we will never get HDMI 2.1 on our M1 MacBooks. I'm sorry. Let's see. I personally don't like getting expensive tech that I can't also use for productivity, so I love when games work well on my cheap MacBook Pro and iPhone. There you go. It's an efficiency thing. Whatever. See, like, there's so much... Even right now, just in the chat, there's so much back and forth on, like, what good gaming is or what real gaming is. And it's like, this is why I'm happily not involved. Whenever I hear about things from the gaming community, it's usually just a lot of people annoyed and angry with the way companies release games, with the way communities treat games. It just feels like a big just cyclone of disappointment constantly cycling around and around. I don't like how Steam did this. I don't like that Valve did this. I don't like that Activision did this. It's just always just a big circle of disappointment. And also very expensive, just being involved in it, buying the gaming hardware to play the games. Buying the games costs $60, $70. Game Pass costing all these memberships stacking up. I'm just like, you know what? You guys enjoy it. If you like it, I'm okay over here. The Apple Sheep Worlds. I'll just be fine. How dedicated consoles receive more general quality titles. Yeah, but okay. You believe what you want to believe. I'm just telling you the general public puts more time and attention and value in the convenience and efficiency of gaming. That's all. It's like, it's the same way of saying, I'm not saying McDonald's is the best restaurant. I'm just saying they sell at incredibly high volume because they prioritized what most people were looking for in fast food. Yeah, people are all going to be disappointed and argue about GTA 6 when that gets released. And also Elder Scrolls 6 will be a big disappointment. People will be really mad at that after waiting for years for it. So I'm kind of happily not involved. What do I think of the Mini Mac? What? The Mini Mac? It's great. If you just need a cheap, basic desktop, buy it secondhand, buy it refurbished. There's a difference between real gaming and Candy Crush on your 5K Mac. I've never played Candy Crush, period, by the way. But I think that is entirely subjective, and because everyone has a different opinion on it, therefore, like, no opinion is really valid. Like, everyone has their own take on it. So there's not much objectivity with it, and therefore there's a lot harder things to get excited for because everyone has a different definition of what real or what good or what a good game is or a bad game is. So I'm happily not involved, and I'm going to keep it that way. Sorry. There's no more gaming content, no more gaming channel. I'm happily going to promote my friends that do gaming stuff that are probably more into it than I am. But, yeah, I think we've been live for a while now. I've got some more EV stuff to work on. In denial when it comes to my iOS games on my backers. I've never heard anyone say that, TVCH Lord, but you kind of come across as insecure when you say things like that. That's all I'm saying. I just don't think they care. It's not that they're saying they're just as good. They just don't care. And you're trying to convince them that they do care and they don't. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you for watching. All of you, and I'll see you next week. There is a podcast, by the way. Someone was asking if we did a tech podcast. Randy couldn't make it, but me and Mike had a fun discussion about the iPhone 15. We talk about internet service providers. We talk about Apple TV Plus and Starlink, and it was a fun podcast. It was good. But I appreciate you all for watching and your support. Very special shout out today for Tyler Forte, Riley McGinnis, Chris, Bobby 4C, and Hasael. Those are the crazy people that signed up for Tailosive Tech Ultra. If I missed anyone, please let me know. Take care, all. Have a good one. Bye bye.